both of you. So if you want to take us through your oral submission, and if you want questions, just give us a bit of time around the 2:10 mark.
Excellent. All right. So I'll start and Tracy will follow me. My name's Janet. Kia ora koutou katoa. Women's Dignity are a group of friends, whānau and professional associates who are concerned at recent legislation being proposed which could harm women's and children's rights. I am a daughter, mother, grandmother, feminist and woman-loving woman. I have worked as a therapist and a teacher. We support the intention of this bill to protect the rights of gay and gender non-conforming people. But the way it is drafted will have the opposite effect, increasing homophobia and non-acceptance of same-sex attraction, as well as harming children. Mandating an affirmation approach only to gender will increase the use of puberty blockers, which prevent children from being able to experience puberty and resolve their dysphoria naturally, many of whom would grow up to be happily lesbian, bisexual or gay. This approach also contributes to lesbians being pressured to have sex with male-bodied people, as a recent survey of 80 lesbians recorded. It also treats gender identity as inherent in contradiction to the Births, Deaths, Marriages and Relationships Registration Bill, which treats it as fluid. I would like to make the following additional 5 points to our written submission. 1. The bill prevents sound therapeutic practice. Mandating an affirmation-only approach to gender dysphoria prevents exploration of all the person's issues, experiences, family situation, and medical and psychological conditions. This is contrary to a good therapeutic process, which requires the therapist to take a neutral approach and to be client-affirming rather than gender-affirming. It also is contrary to the fundamental medical principle, first do no harm, because medicalised transition does do harm. 2. The New Zealand Association of Counsellors and the New Zealand Association of Psychotherapists have codes of ethics which call for safety, increasing the range of choices, involving whānau, preventing harm, and most importantly, informed consent. The gender affirmation only approach mandated by this bill would prevent people, particularly children, from being able to make informed choices and would prevent parents from being able to refuse treatment on behalf of their children, which is a right guaranteed in the Bill of Rights. Children and their parents are not currently being informed of the true consequences of embarking upon puberty blockers. They are told that puberty blockers are simply a pause button, when in fact 100% of children on blockers go on to take cross-sex hormones, making permanent changes, including likely sterility, loss of sexual pleasure, and loss of bone density. They are told that medical transition is necessary to prevent suicide, but a Swedish study has found that people who have transitioned have a 19 times higher suicide rate. Children do not have the capacity to understand these long-term consequences. Children and their parents are also not informed that between 80 to 90% of children treated with watchful waiting resolve their dysphoria when they go through puberty and become happy with their biological sex, many growing up to be lesbian and gay. 3. The Royal Australian and New Zealand College of Psychiatrists no longer supports, Australian and New Zealand College of Psychiatrists no longer supports the affirmation-only approach. It says comprehensive assessment is crucial. Assessment and treatment should be evidence-informed, fully explore the patient's gender identity, the context in which this has arisen, other features of mental illness, and a thorough assessment of personal and family history. 4. A recent survey of detransitioners found that more than half feel they are not adequately evaluated prior to transition. An example in New Zealand is Sasha, now aged 19, who says that she was pressured to transition at age 13 when she told her trainee psychologist that she was bisexual, and the trainee suggested that she could be born in the wrong body. Sasha says, I was very open about the fact that I was a victim of domestic violence and abused by men. They knew I had trauma around men. I was experiencing gender dysphoria, but it wasn't because I was trans. It was because I felt safer in a male body. 5. Section 5 of the bill, meaning of conversion practice, specifically exempts people doing actual gay conversion therapy from prosecution by stating that, quote, gender transition, gender identity expression, or identity exploration are not, quote, conversion therapy, despite the fact that these practices prevent kids from growing up understanding that they are gay and breach other parts of the bill, such as Section 9, against causing serious harm. Section 5 also exempts someone administering a health service which protects those administering harmful puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones and surgery from any prosecution. It is worth noting that practitioners can still be sued, though, and will be for these harmful practices. Recommendations. This bill will cause much harm, in particular to children, lesbians and gays. We recommend that this bill is withdrawn. At the very least, all references to gender need to be withdrawn from the bill. Ngā mihi, I'll now pass on to my co-presenter, Tracy.
Kia ora. I'm a gender critical feminist and the mother of 4 children. 2 have spent many years battling anxiety and have in turns ideated and threatened suicide. I know how difficult it is to parent young people who feel this way about life and who I spend a portion of most days worrying about. And I also know that what they say they want when they're vulnerable is not always the best choice for their development or their well-being long term. It worries me under section 5.1b of the proposed legislation, watchful waiting will be seen as suppression of gender and prescribing puberty blockers to young people will become the gold standard for treating New Zealand gender dysphoric youth. That this will be done whether or not parents agree to it, and non-compliant parents may be charged with withholding care and conversion therapy. Psychologists who wish to explore thoroughly the underlying reasons for a person's dysphoria may suffer the same. Conflating innate sexual orientation and gender identity is unhelpful in getting a law passed that most New Zealanders support. This idea that gender identities equate to biological sex is pushing more young people to desire sex changes and is in itself a type of conversion therapy for gender non-conforming children who would otherwise realise they were gay after puberty. Affirmation therapy advocates the use of puberty blockers for children as young as 9. These drugs have already shown to produce harmful side effects such as lowering bone density, degenerative disc disease, impairment of cognitive ability, and the underdevelopment of sex organs. It's unethical to subject a child to these side effects when regret after gender reassignment is an ever-increasing phenomenon worldwide. The most recent study in 2013 on children with gender dysphoria in the Netherlands found 80% of children desisted feeling dysphoric after puberty. Leading gender psychologist Kenneth J. Zucker in his cohort of over 500 dysphoric children found an 87% desistance rate. A statistical report written by Zucker and fellow Michael Bailey found gay men and lesbians exhibited more cross-gender activity as children. Appropriate counselling for children who will later discover they are gay is now considered conversion therapy for trans-identifying children. This bill will work against gay youth with irreversible treatments that have not been studied in enough detail to be adopted so broadly safely. There are currently no detransition support groups or services in New Zealand, and it is of concern that health professionals